that's part of the reason why I wanted to talk about these films is because there's a resonance, I think, with the listening audience that, you know, they've seen these movies and maybe they haven't seen the underlying messages behind them before. And on controversypapers.net, you allude to a recommended television list that may be coming soon. Can you just hit on what maybe some TV shows that people might be interested in that they haven't thought of as potentially revelatory?
That section, as you just mentioned, it's coming soon, and I actually haven't had the time to sit down and do the thing. But I will comment on it because it is very important to what we're talking about today.
Okay.
In terms of important television shows, which I refer to as conspiracy TV, is the following shows. There was the X-Files spin-off called The Lone Gunman. In their very first episode, which was broadcast on March 4th, 2001, they showed the attack on the World Trade Center with an airliner. And in the course of this episode, it is stated by the characters in the episode that the reason for this attack on the World Trade Center was to provide justification for a phony, fabricated war on terrorism. So this had been broadcast 6 months before 9/11. In addition to that, in December of 2005, one of the actors from that show had appeared on the Alex Jones show, and he had mentioned that he was aware of the fact that there were CIA operatives who were going to Hollywood producers' parties and were suggesting plots and plot lines to these producers. And he mentioned, for instance, that Chris Carter had been approached just before the X-Files went on the air that he was going to become very, very rich and very wealthy through this X-Files show. Another TV show that I think is extremely important right now is the show 24. And that at this current time is showing a nuclear attack on U.S. soil by foreign terrorists, which actually are being represented as coming from one particular terrorist, when in fact they're coming from someone entirely different. And this again relates to the false flag aspect. So we're seeing that as well. Another show that's currently on TV that is just as important as 24 is this CBS series called Jericho. And I've done some writing on this show as well. And I've also written a little bit about 24. Now, Jericho shows and also a terrorist nuclear attack on America, and it also shows the aftermath of what happens after this type of thing, how the society breaks down. And in fact, in the very last episode of this Jericho show, which was broadcast last Wednesday, 2 days ago, was saying that these nuclear attacks were coming from Iran and North Korea, which I thought was very interesting because those are two of the countries that were written about in the PNAC Rebuilding America's Defenses report. And we're obviously looking to go after Iran at this point in time, militarily speaking. So these shows are incredibly important because they are showing the future of what looks like is going to be taking place here to provide justification to expand this war in the Middle East. which may end up being World War III by the time these people are finished. Some other shows which are very important are the X-Files itself, which not as an entire series, but in certain of the episodes they showed some very important things. And that's just the type of thing that I will be talking about there, and there are a few others.
Awesome.
As well.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. Okay, now I wanted to just hit on some minor little questions. They're really not minor, actually, but there's some sub-point that sort of came to me while I was checking out your website. They aren't out on anything specific, any of your specific papers, more overarching questions.
Okay.
The first one is you relate a story regarding Timothy McVeigh, because he originally was from Buffalo, and you're from Buffalo, and apparently you had some contact with his family, and they shared a strange story with you about plastic surgery and a fake execution and all that crazy stuff. So can you share this Timothy McVeigh story with the listeners?
Yeah, sure. And Timothy McVeigh is a CIA operative, and this false flag attack on Oklahoma City, which was carried out, was supposedly led to his execution. However, no member of his family showed up for that execution, and I found that very weird, because when you hear about these people on death row, you know, they have many family members that show up just to say goodbye and to, you know, maybe hug them and kiss them for the last time and that sort of thing. In addition to that, there was a book that was written by a couple of the Buffalo News reporters, which provided the establishment version of the Oklahoma City situation and just Timothy McVeigh in general. So through a friend of a friend of a friend type of a thing, I was able to contact a member of McVeigh's family, and I am not at liberty to say who that family member was.
Okay.
But what I will say about it is that it was absolutely verified to me, and this is the reason why I wrote about it, was that he was, in fact, not executed. He is, in fact, still alive. And as happens with these CIA operatives, they are given plastic surgery to change their appearance. Their history and their backstory is fabricated, as is a new identity, and he is currently working in the South America continent.
All right, yeah, I found that to be a pretty fascinating story. I figured the listeners would too. And another issue I want to ask you about is, and we talk about it a lot on this program, but it's not really talked about at all, to the best of my knowledge, on the controversypapers.net, and that is the UFO issue. I don't want to harp on it too much because that's not what we're here to talk about this week, but I wanted to ask you where you stand on the UFO issue with regards to this overarching big picture of the globalist agenda.
Based on comments that people like Ronald Reagan had made and other people in the past, it appears that the UFO issue is being used as a way to unite the entire globe in terms of coming together in defense of our planet against an outside invading force that may come in. And this is talked about in the context of a hoaxed UFO invasion that you've heard many things about over the past 10 or 15 years. And it seems to be picking up a little steam as it goes along in terms of a story. And I mean a news story as opposed to a fiction story. Personally, I have had a UFO experience, which was in March of 2000 in Sedona, Arizona. Myself, my wife, and several of our friends took a vacation out to Sedona. We went to the Grand Canyon and so forth. And I knew the reputation of Sedona, and I was speaking all the way out there. We took a train. I was speaking all the way on the train. What I most want to see is a UFO while I'm out there. And so one night while we were there, we were driving back from this particular meeting that we had with these Native American people who had shown us some of their religious places where they go to conduct their ceremonies. And it was getting dark, and we pulled over into this rest stop area just to take a break from all the driving that we had done on that particular day. And the people, there was 5 people in the vehicle, and I was sitting in the middle of the back seat. My wife was driving, and our 3 of the people that we went with were sitting in the other seats. And Lori, the woman that was sitting to my left in the back seat, had said, blurted out at one moment, she said, "Now, Kent, here is when you are going to get what you came for." And I said, "What? What are you talking about?" And just as she got done finished saying that, a UFO comes out of nowhere, lands in front of us, does this series of aerial maneuvers, and then it warps out of sight. This was extremely captivating, very interesting, and I had questioned my friend Lori late into that night. Why did you make that comment? Why were you compelled to do it at that moment, and so forth? And so I've also done a lot of research about that issue as well, the UFO issue, because it is incredibly interesting intellectually. Just the puzzle aspect of trying to figure out what is going on, and to try to tie together some of the testimony of some of the bigger cases, like the Travis Walton case and others, that it's been something I've looked in. Now, whether this is outside visitation or whether this is the military, I still have not made my mind up on that, which it is, one of those 2 things. But other than that, it's very interesting to me to look at.
That's good. That's good to hear, because a lot of people in the conspiracy realm won't touch UFOs and vice versa. So, and I think it's a mistake to ignore one. You have to understand all of this to really try and get a grasp on the big picture, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, because there, in a lot of different ways, there are many interlocks between these things and how they fit into the bigger picture. For instance, obviously a UFO invasion from outside our galaxy or solar system or whatever, that would be incredibly helpful to those who want to have a single world government, because it would unite the people of the world against this outside invading force.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's convenient in that way as well.
Yeah. One of the big aspects of this occult conspiracy thing, for lack of a better term, that I've always found interesting is the concept of revelation of method. And I'm sort of tying this in with the 2012 end date. Where do you think this is headed? Are we going to go through a period of revelation of method? Are we living through a period of revelation of method? And do you think 2012 is maybe, when the proverbial shit hits the fan?
2012 appears to be the end of a cycle on which the Mayan calendar reveals to us. And in terms of that date, this is an issue that's related to spiritual ascension, okay? In terms of apocalypse and all of that type of thinking related to this, listen, we just gotten done with Y2K, okay? And now we're under the gun, so to speak, with 2012. And what's interesting about this is that the time that we're under right now is referred to as the Mayan Age of Revealing. And this is what the Mayan prophecies talk about, is that during this time and during this end of this cycle, the masks of the global controllers will be coming down, and they will be revealing true motivations, the power behind the power, so to speak. So in terms of that, that's where I see 2012 fitting in. But that does not mean that there aren't going to be the end of the world people, coming out of the woodwork once again to say this is the end of everything. And just one other thing, too, is that the original meaning of the word apocalypse is not related to the end of all life, but is actually related to the revealing of an inner truth. And this is initially a Greek definition and a Greek word that had become the word apocalypse. So when you hear about that being referred to in the Bible, for instance, you refer to, this is actually referring to this revealing of these inner truths and not necessarily, the end of everything and,
Yeah, cataclysmic type event.
Yeah. But that does not mean that we will not face some tribulations in the years ahead. Because, for example, Hillary Clinton being president is a perfect opportunity to manipulate 52% of the American population, which are women right now. And that'll be looked at as a big win for women, when actually it appears that Hillary Clinton could be a Trojan horse for some of the furtherings of this one world agenda.
And then the sort of the big picture question, I guess, as we head to the end here, is like people like you and I who are trying to understand this and get the word out. I mean, we're vastly outnumbered by the mindless people who don't know what's going on. And as this power group gains more power and consolidates their power and keeps pushing forward their agenda, for starters, are we screwed? Are we as a human race, the free people who, you and I and the people who want to try and stop this, are we jumping into this too late? Is there any chance that we can reverse the course? And what do you suggest people do?
Okay. Actually, I'm a believer in things happening for a reason. And, I am not going to sit here and worry about this type of thing, because as an individual, I'm doing all I can do right now about it. So as long as I can honestly and safely say that I did my part to at least attempt to educate people, it's something that I am not going to regret later later on if we end up being screwed or we end up losing the battle, so to speak. But on the other hand, there are some incredibly promising things that have been happening. There has been an awakening of some of these previously asleep people, and as Michael Tessarian pointed out in the interview I did with him, he said, you can't worry about the sleepers because they are in their particular spiritual place for a reason, just as you are in yours for a particular reason. Mm-hmm. Before I put the controversy papers together, I went through a process and through a period of time when I was attempting to educate everybody under the sun that I knew, and that was just a complete asinine thing for me to be doing because I was setting myself up for complete failure. Even though I was successful in educating certain individuals, I was still unable to do everybody. So therefore, I was looking at this as a big loss instead of a series of small victories, And in terms of how this is going to end up, that's a good question. And I can see some things, but I can't see everything. And the things that I do write about are things that I'm very sure of, either through research or through that gut feeling, that intuition, that instinct, And so in the bigger picture context, we may go through a very bad time before things begin to look promising, and that may be what our close future holds for us.
What about the future for you? What do you have on your plate? What are you looking forward to putting out here in the future?
Well, as I said a little while ago, I'm working on a complete series of Hollywood films where I'm going to talk about either the symbolism or how the audience is being manipulated. And some of those, as I mentioned, my next report is going to be on They Live. Some other things on that list are 2001, A Space Odyssey, all the movies and the Night of the Living Dead and the Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead series of films by George Romero, The Exorcist, and how that was manipulating the subconscious of the viewers, and also the economic underpinning of the films Clerks and Clerks 2.
Oh, wow.
I want to take a look at that as well. I'm also working on an outline of a report which is going to tie in the characters of the television show Lost with the major arcana of the tarot.
Oh, wow. I'm a big Lost fan. That sounds interesting.
Yeah. In fact, I'm a Johnny-come-lately to Lost. I got hooked about a month ago. I've been watching the season 1 and 2 DVDs, which I had just recently got and finished. And it's just a very interesting story. And I want to know what the hell is going on.
We all do. Well, that's great. I'm looking forward to seeing your piece on that. So more. You're going to be tackling more of this cultural material and where these messages may be inside of them.
Yeah, and the other thing too is I'm going to be moving a little more into the direction of the spirituality and a little bit away from some of the heavy politics aspects of what I've been writing about. And that's just because of interest levels on the part of readers,
Yeah.
you know, what they want to read as opposed to what I want them to read.
Well, I look forward to all this great stuff, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on controversyypapers.net, and I suggest the Binnall of America audio listeners do too. I think you have a really very discerning eye on what's really going on, and I appreciate that. And this episode sort of took me back to my roots of conspiracy research, because I've drifted away from that over the last few years, but definitely remembering a lot about what I enjoyed so much about studying conspiracy theory and what's really going on here, because there is a big picture situation going on, especially with this global agenda. So thank you so much for appearing on the show. The website, of course, is controversyypapers.net. Kent Daniel Benkowski, thanks for coming on Binnall of America Audio.
Thank you very much, Tim. I've had a great time today, and thank you to your listeners. I greatly appreciate participating in your show.
There you have it, folks. That was part 2 of 2 with Kent Daniel Benkowski. Big thanks to KDB for coming on the show. Of course, you can find out more information on Kent Daniel Benkowski at his website, controversyypapers.blogspot.com, KentroversyyPapers.blogspot.com. Check it out. We're going to skip over listener mail this week and the plea for donations and the preview for next week, actually. We're going to skip all that. And I'll explain that in a moment. Let me give my thanks out to the fantastic BinnallofAmerica.com staff, Leslie, Chiron, R. Lee, Joe V., Ralph Molesworth, and Tina Senna. I've had a very difficult week, folks, as you'll hear about in a second. And the staff of BOA has really kept my spirits up all week and been more than just writers for the website and more than just contributors to Binnall of America. They've been my friends, and they've been my support structure this week, and I appreciate that tremendously. So thank you to Leslie, Chiron, R. Lee, Joe V., Ralph Molesworth, and Tina Senna for keeping my spirits up this week during a very difficult time. And as I alluded to, we're skipping out on a bunch of stuff here at the end of the program because there is not going to be a program next week. There may not even be a program in 2 weeks, and this is really a big reason why this week's episode is coming at you pretty late in the day on Sunday, and definitely a little rough around the edges. At the risk of getting too deeply personal here on this show, I'm just going to say that my family are in the midst of a pretty serious health crisis right now, involving my father, and many of the BinnallofAmerica.com readers are familiar with my father being sick over the last couple of years, but it's gotten pretty serious, and it's requiring all of my attention at this time. And I posted a little message at BinnallofAmerica.com under the title, A Message from Binnall, that'll give you some more details, but suffice it to say, folks, is my father's very sick right now, and I just don't have the time or the energy to really focus on the audio program. We're playing it by ear right now, see how things are going to develop, and I hope to be back here and talking to you shortly, but I know for sure we probably will not be coming at you next week, and there's a very good possibility we'll be coming to you in 2 weeks. So I guess all I can say is please pray for my family, and hopefully you'll be hearing from me soon. Until then, folks, thanks for listening. This is Tim Binnall, signing off.